This is Dr. Paul with Online Chiropractic Marketing Systems, and we're going to review how to do a practice analysis. And essentially, it's a way to evaluate statistically where your business is at a snapshot and what are the fastest, quickest methods to increase your potential business. So what this is just a graph. This is an Excel spreadsheet, and you have them probably on your computer. If not, I can send them to you. And really all that we do is, number one, is at the top here you see we have 1 through 30 at the top of the sheet right here, 1 through 30. And on the left hand side we put the patient's names going down. Now, a couple factors we want to take into consideration. We do need a decent sample size, so we want a minimum of 50 patients, number one. Number two is we want every new patient from the last one, whether it's today or yesterday, starting with today's last new patient or yesterday's new patient, going straight back 50 new patients. And number three is do not skip. So it doesn't matter if a patient came in and left and they were only in town, like a truck driver for one day and left. Do not skip. Do not cherry pick. If you do any of this, they will be false statistics. So if you can have at least 50 names vertically coming down, and all we do is just put their name. Now, next to their name, we want the source of the business, and the more specific the source, the better. Like here, it says local newspaper flyer. If that was a marketing source that you had, or internet, Google local, or a corporate lecture. So try to be as specific as you can with the source of that patient. Now, this is very important. Now, at the bottom of these names, at the very bottom, the last two lines down at the bottom, put your total number for new patients for the last 6 months and the total number of patient visits for the last 6 months. And here's what we'll be able to do. And when you look at the patients, what you'll do is you'll take that patient's name and you'll go across and put a check in the box of the last visit that you saw them. Now, these numbers do not represent dates on calendars. They represent patient visits is what they're. So an example is, if you are still seeing the patient, there would be no checks in this column at all. It would be free and clear. Now, if the last day you saw the patient was the first day, in other words, they did not show up for their second day, then that's where the X would go, right there. And if the patient, say they dropped out on, let's say, the 12th day was the last day that you saw them, put an X right there. And do this for each one of the patients, and it should be 50 going vertically down this column. Now, here's what we'll be able to show with laser focus on where you have the greatest potential. Number one, this is a dropout rate. So we're going to go 1 through 30 at the top, you can see here. And depending on where the cluster of X's are, if there's a cluster in the 1 segment or the 2 segment or whatever cluster, we're going to be able to do a comparative analysis on how you process patients with your patient education, whether it's you do a report of finding, day 2, whatever. We're going to be able to evaluate with high accuracy several factors on what's causing the loss of that cluster of patients. In other words, let's say you do a report of findings on your second day, and we see a cluster, a disproportionate number of patients that are dropping out at the second day. Well, we know exactly, in other words, they're not showing up on the third day. Well, we know exactly what should be accomplished on this second day, so we can go in and see exactly what you're doing versus what needs to be accomplished and immediately change that statistic. Now, this type of analysis is typically increased my doctor's businesses anywhere from the absolute low end, as might be 20%, but I've had doctors increase their business as much as 300% just with this analysis alone, and then me explaining to them how to interpret it and then exactly what is needed and done. Because as soon as we stop this statistic, your numbers go up immediately. So that's how you analyze. That's how you fill in the blanks here. And again, so we can check on retention issues and be very key point specific on the communication that is needed or lacking that's causing that weakness. Number two is when we look at the source of the patient. Remember, we want a specific source. Because remember, there's only essentially 5 to 6 sources of patients, and these are the categories. It's the introduction category, which is the highest probability of getting business, where there's high need and high trust. You can get as much as 75% of that business. And then the next category is what's called active referral business. And then the next category is what's called passive referrals. And as you come down, you decrease the likelihood of getting business. Like when you come down to leads, that's only about 15%. Or when you come down to what's called cold calls, you don't know if they have a need and there's no trust. That's only about 1%. So I could look at your sources of business, where you're getting them, and we can see immediately which categories they're in, which tells us which categories there's the greatest potential. As an example, maybe all of your marketing systems, you don't have any introduction business. In other words, none of the patients come from introduction marketing systems. Well, I know immediately that we can do, and there's essentially 5 introduction marketing systems. I know immediately we can do 1, 2, or 3 of those and have huge success. And then the system that we would use in that introduction system would either be publicity, advertising, or educational sales. So and of course, educational sales gives the greatest opportunity. So as an example, I could easily go in and go, okay, there's no introduction systems. So we can not only put in 1 or 2 introduction systems, but then we can also put in a educational sales component, and you have one of the greatest forms of most effective forms of marketing. And so immediately we can increase the dropout by this type of statistical analysis, which will significantly start to bring up your practice. And then immediately we can look at 1, 2, or 3 of your systems and implement those. Typically, this alone will increase a chiropractor's practice 100%. 100%, the systems that I just explained. So this is how you do a practice analysis. So if you'd fill this out, 1 through 30 where they dropped out, remember, if you're still seeing them, there's no X by their name. If they dropped out in the 31st visit, there's no X by their name. If they dropped out in the 30th visit or less, you're going to put an X at the number that they dropped out. If the last day you saw them was the 5th visit, it goes to X. The source of the patient, total new patients, patient visits going back 6 months, and now we can make an exact analysis and a very highly specific strategy to increase your business 20, 50, 100%. This is Dr. Paul with Online Chiropractic Marketing.